The night was thick and cold in the small village of Wando deep in the green heart of Ethiopia. The moon hung above the trees like a watching eye, silver and silent. Crickets sang their lonely songs, and far away, a lion roared, long and deep, like thunder crawling across the sky. Inside a small mud hut on the edge of the forest, a young man named Kaleab knelt on the ground, his hands lifted toward heaven. He was only 23, but his eyes carried a light stronger than fear. He whispered softly, "Lord Jesus, you are my life. Even if they take my body, my soul belongs to you." Kaleab had once been a shepherd. He loved his sheep, his land, and his people. But when he met Jesus through an old traveling preacher, everything changed. He started telling everyone in his village that Jesus was real, not just a prophet, but the Son of God. At first, people laughed. Then they grew angry. Ethiopia was full of faiths and traditions, but not everyone welcomed his new message. Some elders warned him, "Stop speaking that name, Kaleab, or you will bring trouble." But Kaleab smiled. "How can I be silent when my heart is free?" he said. Days passed, and whispers began. They said Kaleab had betrayed the old ways. One evening, as he returned from helping an old widow carry water, dark shadows surrounded him. A man with a scar on his cheek stepped forward. "You will stop speaking of this Jesus," he growled. Kaleab stood still. "I cannot stop. He saved me." The man's eyes burned like fire. "Then let's see if he will save you again." They dragged him through the village. The people watched, some afraid, some angry, some weeping quietly. A few begged, "Leave him alone, he has done nothing wrong." But the men would not listen. They took him deep into the forest, where the moonlight could barely touch the ground. There stood an old acacia tree, tall and crooked, like it had seen many secrets. They tied Kaleab to it, his arms stretched wide. The ropes bit into his skin. His breath shook, but he whispered again, "Jesus, I am yours." One of the men pointed toward the dark trees. "We will leave you for the lions. If your Jesus is real, let him come." The group laughed and disappeared into the shadows, their footsteps fading away. Silence returned, heavy and cold. Only the wind answered, brushing through the leaves like a ghost. Then came the sound, a low growl, a rumble from the dark. The bushes moved. Kaleab's heart pounded. He turned his head slowly and saw two golden eyes glowing in the dark, watching him. The lion stepped out, its mane shining in the moonlight, muscles rolling under its golden skin. It was huge, strong, beautiful, and terrifying. Kaleab closed his eyes. "Jesus," he whispered, "if this is the end, let your will be done. But if you choose, show them your power." The lion crouched low, ready to leap. The ground trembled under its paws. Its breath was hot and wild. Kaleab could smell it, the raw scent of danger and death. And then, something strange happened. The wind stopped, the lion froze, and a bright, gentle light began to glow around Kaleab, faint at first, then brighter, until it painted the trees with gold. The lion blinked, lifted its head, and instead of roaring, it bowed. For a long moment, time itself seemed to stop. The forest grew still. No sound, no movement, only the soft glow of the strange light surrounding Kaleab. His tears shimmered as they rolled down his cheeks, mixing with the dust on his face. The lion, the same creature meant to tear him apart, now stood frozen before him. Its fierce eyes had softened, its great mane trembling as if touched by invisible hands. Then slowly, unbelievably, the lion bowed its head to the ground. Kaleab could hardly breathe. His heart was beating fast, yet peace filled his chest like warm fire. "Jesus," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You are truly here." The lion let out a deep, low sound, not a growl this time, but something that felt almost like a sigh. It stepped closer, its paws pressing softly against the earth. Kaleab could smell its breath, but there was no fear now. The creature looked at him with eyes that seemed to understand. Then the ropes around his wrists, the ones that had cut into his skin, snapped. Not by any human hand, but as if an unseen force had touched them. Kaleab fell to his knees, free, the ropes hanging loose beside him. The lion stood there, watching. It did not move to attack. Instead, it circled around him slowly, like a guardian. Kaleab lifted his trembling hands. "Lord, I see your power even in the wild beasts, he said. You command even lions, and they obey. Far away, the men who had tied him came running back. They had heard the lion's first roar and wanted to be sure Kaleab was gone. They carried torches and spears, whispering and laughing darkly as they approached the tree. But when they reached the clearing, the laughter died in their throats. Their eyes widened. The lion was still there, but instead of eating Kaleab, it was standing beside him, as if protecting him. What is this? One of the men gasped. The leader, the man with the scar, stepped back. His torch shook in his hand. That's impossible, he muttered. No lion behaves like that. Kaleab turned toward them, his face calm and shining in the moonlight. I told you, he said softly. Jesus saves. The lion gave a great roar, not of anger, but of power, and the ground seemed to shake. The men dropped their weapons and ran, their torches scattering sparks into the night. Kaleab fell to his knees again, his hands lifted high. All glory to you, Lord, he said, weeping. The lion turned and walked slowly into the forest, disappearing into the shadows like a silent servant sent from heaven. When the morning came, the villagers found Kaleab walking back toward them. His clothes were torn, his body bruised, but his face glowed with peace. He carried the broken ropes in his hands, proof of what had happened. Children ran ahead shouting, he's alive. Kaleab is alive. Old women wept and thanked God. But others, including the men who had fled, hid their faces in shame. Kaleab spoke to the crowd. I do not live because I am strong. I live because Jesus heard my cry. Even the lion could not touch me because his power is greater than death. Some laughed nervously, others bowed their heads. But a few, especially the ones who had seen the lion, fell to their knees, whispering, truly, the God of Kaleab is real. That night, when Kaleab returned home, he knelt once more before his small wooden cross. The forest was quiet again. No lion's roar, no shouts, only the gentle sound of wind through the trees. He whispered, Lord, I will not stop. Even if they tie me again, I will tell the world that you are alive. And in that moment, far away in the dark forest, the same lion lifted its head toward the sky and roared, a sound not of hunger, but of praise. Word of Kaleab's miracle traveled faster than the wind. By sunrise, every corner of Wando Genet was whispering his name. From the market square to the coffee farms, from shepherds on the hills to women at the river, everyone was asking the same question. Did the lion really bow? Some said yes, they saw the marks of the ropes on his hands and believed. Others said no, it was a trick, maybe the lion was tame, maybe it was only a story. But in every heart, whether doubting or believing, a strange stirring began. Kaleab sat quietly in front of his hut. His body was weak, but his spirit was strong. He remembered the light in the forest, the peace in the lion's eyes. His heart burned to tell the truth, not for fame, but so others could know the power of Jesus. When the sun rose high, people began to gather around him. Children sat cross-legged on the ground, women brought food and water. Even the elders came, their faces stern and cautious. One of them, Elder Tesfaye, spoke first. Kaleab, he said, we heard strange things. Tell us what happened in the forest. Kaleab lifted his eyes. I will not lie, he said. They tied me to a tree to be eaten by a lion. I prayed to Jesus, the Son of the living God, and he came to me. A light shone, the ropes broke, and the lion bowed before him. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some gasped, others looked at each other, unsure what to say. An old woman stood up, her voice trembling. My son, she said, I have lived many years. I have seen lions tear men apart. But never bow. What kind of power is this? Kaleab smiled softly. It is not the power of man. It is the love of Jesus. He hears the cries of those who trust him. Suddenly, someone pushed through the crowd. It was the man with the scar, the same one who had tied Kaleab to the tree. His eyes were dark, and his face was pale. The people stepped back, afraid of what he might do. He stopped a few feet from Kaleab, breathing heavily. For a long time, he said nothing. Then his voice broke. I saw it, he whispered. I saw the lion bow. I ran because I was afraid. But since that night, I cannot sleep. That light still burns in my eyes. The people gasped again. The elder's mouth fell open. Kaleab looked at the man with calm eyes. Why have you come? Tears filled the man's eyes. To ask if Jesus can forgive me. The crowd went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Kaleab stood and walked to him slowly. He placed a hand on the man's shoulder and said, Jesus forgave the ones who nailed him to the cross. He can forgive you too. The man fell to his knees, weeping. Then I believe, he said. I believe he is real. The villagers watched as Kaleab knelt beside him and prayed. Some began to cry. Others lifted their hands, whispering prayers of their own. For the first time, the name of Jesus echoed freely through the village, not as a threat, but as hope. That night, many homes lit small fires and prayed. People who had never spoken of faith before began to whisper of forgiveness and light. Children repeated Kaleab's story, their voices full of wonder. The lion bowed, and far in the forest, as if heaven itself was listening, a lion roared once again, not in anger, but in peace. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Kaleab's miracle spread far beyond Wando Genet. People from other villages came to see him, farmers, travelers, even soldiers. Some came with curiosity, others came with anger, saying he was turning people away from the old ways. Yet Kaleab did not stop. Every evening, under the same acacia tree where he had been tied, he gathered the people to pray. They sang softly in the moonlight, and many who had once mocked him now lifted their voices beside him. Hope was returning to hearts that had long been afraid. But darkness was watching. One evening, as Kaleab and the villagers sang, 3 men arrived on horseback. They wore black robes and carried long sticks carved with sharp metal at the ends. Their faces were hard, their eyes cold. The leader, Commander Hamir, shouted, "Who is Kaleab?" The singing stopped. The people froze. Kaleab stood and stepped forward. "I am," he said calmly. Hamir sneered. "You have caused trouble. You tell people to follow your Jesus. You make them forget their father's gods. Do you not fear the law?" Kaleab shook his head. "I only speak of the one who saved me from the lion. I do not force anyone to believe. I only tell them what is true." Hamir's face darkened. "Then you will stop tonight. Or we will stop you." The crowd murmured in fear. Mothers held their children close. Some men tried to speak up, but the soldiers raised their weapons and silenced them. Kaleab raised his hands. "You may silence my voice," he said, "but you cannot silence the truth." Hamir's eyes blazed. "Tie him again," he shouted. "Let the forest finish what it started." The soldiers grabbed Kaleab and dragged him toward the trees. The villagers cried out, begging them to stop, but no one dared to fight. The same acacia tree stood waiting, its branches swaying gently under the rising wind. As they tied Kaleab once more, the sky began to darken. Thick clouds rolled over the moon, and the air grew heavy. Thunder rumbled far away, echoing through the hills. Hamir laughed bitterly. "Your God cannot save you twice." Kaleab closed his eyes. "He doesn't have to," he said softly. "Once was enough to show his power. But if he wills, he will do it again." The soldiers stepped back, waiting for a sign of the lion. But instead, the wind began to howl. The trees bent and cracked. Lightning flashed across the sky, bright and fierce. One of the soldiers shouted, "Let's go. This storm, it's not normal." But Hamir raised his spear. "No, he is a liar. Let the storm do what it will." Suddenly, lightning struck the acacia tree, boom, and a blinding light filled the forest. The soldiers were thrown backward by the force. The ropes that held Kaleab burst into flames and turned to ashes, but his body was untouched. When the light faded, Kaleab stood free once more, his eyes full of peace. The tree behind him burned with a strange golden fire that did not consume it, glowing like the light of heaven itself. Hamir fell to the ground, covering his face. "Stop, stop. What power is this?" Kaleab stepped toward him. His voice was gentle, yet full of strength. "It is not my power, Hamir. It is Jesus, the one who rules the storm, the fire, and the lion." The commander trembled. The soldiers fled into the darkness, terrified. Only Hamir remained, shaking. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I did not know." Kaleab reached out his hand. "Now you do," he said. "And he still loves you." Rain began to fall, soft and clean, washing the ashes from the earth. The golden fire faded, but its light seemed to stay in Kaleab's eyes. When the villagers came running, they found him standing in the rain, unharmed. They saw the burned tree, the wet ground, and the mark of the lightning where he had stood. No one could deny it now. Something greater than man had moved among them. That night, the whole village knelt together under the stars. Men, women, and children lifted their hands toward heaven and prayed, "Jesus, we believe." And deep in the forest, once again, the lion roared, a sound that rolled across the mountains like thunder praising its maker. The morning after the storm, the land looked new. The trees glistened with dew, the air smelled clean, and the sun rose brighter than it ever had before. Birds filled the sky with songs as if celebrating something the world could not yet explain. Kaleab stood by the acacia tree, now split down the middle by lightning but still standing. Its bark was scarred, yet from its cracks tiny green leaves had begun to sprout, new life growing from the fire. Kaleab smiled softly. "Even the tree remembers God's mercy," he whispered. The villagers gathered again around him. They were not the same people they had been before. Their eyes were gentler now, their hearts softer. Many who had doubted now carried peace in their faces. The man with the scar stood beside Kaleab like a brother, and Commander Hamir knelt among the people, silent and humbled. Elder Tesfaye stepped forward. "Kaleab," he said, "we saw it with our own eyes, the lion, the light, the fire. What should we do now?" Kaleab looked at them all. The young, the old, the strong, the weak, and his voice carried through the still morning air. "Do what I did," he said. "Believe. Love your enemies. Help those who hurt you. Tell everyone that Jesus is alive. The same power that saved me lives in all who trust him." Tears filled many eyes. Women covered their faces and wept quietly. Some of the men dropped to their knees, praying aloud. It was no longer about one man's survival, it was about a whole people waking to the truth. From that day, the village changed. They built a small gathering place under the acacia tree. It was simple, just wooden benches and a cross carved from the same tree that once held Kaleab's ropes. But every time they prayed there, the wind would move through the branches like a whisper of peace. People from other regions began to visit, drawn by the story of the lion that bowed. They came carrying sickness, fear, and doubt, and many left healed, not just in body, but in heart. Some said that when they prayed under the tree, they felt warmth in their souls, like the light that had once shone in the forest. Years passed, and Kaleab grew older. His hair turned white, and his hands shook, but his eyes never lost their fire. Children would gather around him as he told them the story again and again, of the night the lion bowed, and how Jesus saved him not just from death, but from fear. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, Kaleab sat beneath the tree for the last time. The lion, the same one from years ago, appeared at the edge of the forest, now gray around the mane, but strong as ever. It walked slowly toward him and sat down beside him, resting its head on the ground. Kaleab smiled and whispered, "My friend, your roar told the world about him." The lion blinked slowly, as if it understood. That night, the villagers found Kaleab sitting peacefully against the tree, his face lifted toward heaven, his hands folded in prayer. He had gone home to the one he loved. But on his lips was the faintest smile, the smile of a man who had seen the impossible and lived to tell it. They buried him beneath the acacia tree, where new flowers bloomed every season. No one planted them, they just grew, wild and bright, as if heaven watered them itself. And even now, when the wind passes through that place, the villagers say you can hear two sounds, the whisper of leaves that sound like a prayer. And, sometimes, far in the distance, the echo of a lion's roar. Summary: in the heart of Ethiopia, a young Christian named Kaleab was tied to a tree to be eaten by a lion for refusing to deny his faith in Jesus. But when death came close, heaven intervened, the lion bowed instead of attacking. From that moment, Kaleab's miracle shook the whole village. Even his enemies, who once tried to destroy him, saw the power of God with their own eyes. Through storms, fire, and persecution, Kaleab stood firm, and every act of faith drew more people to the light of Jesus. His story became a living testimony that God's power rules over nature, fear, and even death itself. Years later, Kaleab's name was remembered not as a man who survived the lion, but as one whose faith changed a nation. Moral lesson: faith that stands firm in darkness can bring light to an entire world. When we trust Jesus completely, even in the face of death, danger, or rejection, he shows his power in ways beyond human understanding. Kaleab's story reminds us that God can turn the very thing meant to destroy us into the miracle that saves us. The lion bowed not to man, but to the power of Christ living in him, proving that no force on earth is greater than the name of Jesus. The end.